In a world of Instagram fighters and YouTube boxers, tonight we've just seen two men have a good old fashioned scrap and see who the better man is. And David Avanesyan is that man. He is that guy, the European welterweight champion, a real fighting man, has beaten down and broke down Josh Kelly in 6 rounds. And look, credit to both men. That is as good a European title fight as you're likely to see this year or in many a year. Do you know, it reminded me the opening, 3 or 4 rounds, I thought this looks like Frampton Martinez won. The intensity, the blood, the sweat, the snot, the desire, everything. It just had that look about it. And I tweeted, I said, can he do what Frampton did? Can he beat the pressure fighter? Can he break down the pressure fighter? And look, technically and things like that, I want to just break it down and slow it down a little bit. I'm not going to do too much with the clips because I want to get the content out a little bit earlier because, views and etc. etc. I hope you understand that, guys. Josh Kelly started the fight well. He started it well. He held his back foot. He boxed centering. I spoke to I didn't speak to him, but I commented on his breakdown, Peter McDonough, on the Voice from the Corner channel, and I said, for me, I think he needs to fight this fight on the Betfred sign in the centre of the ring. Try not to get caught on the ropes. Try not to expend too much energy and manage the clock. And I'll mention that in a minute. But he was doing that. He was holding his back foot and he was utilising the jab. If you remember the pre-fight video I did, I mentioned about Adam Booth mentioning about Josh Warrington not throwing the jab. And I mentioned that Josh doesn't really throw a lot of jabs. And when he does, it's mediocre. It isn't a great jab. He can throw a good one, but it's far and few between. It's never consistent. In this fight, in the opening outset, in the opening few rounds, he threw a lovely, solid, strong, low hand held, up through the middle jab. Lovely, long jab, strong, solid, bit of shoulder in behind it, and he's pushing off that back foot, so getting a bit of power on it, keeping Avanesyan, just a little offset by it. He was landing it. And then from there, he was side on. If you go back and watch his fights against Campos, and if you go back and watch his fight against Robinson, he was showing far too much of his midriff, his solar plex, his belly button. He was showing that midriff far too much. In this fight, he was side on, he was edging back, he was giving less target, and he was boxing well. He was landing good check hooks. He was check hooking and pivoting off. He was turning Avanesyan. He was landing. But this is where I think the fight changed. I think the moment he buzzed him, because he had the better hand speed at that time in those sharp early rounds where you've got that bit of speed and you're snappy, I think that was the worst thing that could have happened to him, was buzzing Avanesyan. Because as soon as he started engaging in a trade up with him, he landed that shot, he jumped on him, and then in those sequences, we start to see Josh expending too much energy too soon, jumped on him, shot his bolt a little bit, he's trading up, then all of a sudden there's a bit of claret around the back of his head, he's bleeding, then he's on the back foot. Avanesyan starts to edge forward, he starts to edge closer. And he lost his base and he lost his shape. The jab just disintegrated round by round by round. I tweeted on the page, I said the jabs, it's just decreased, the activity, it's not there anymore. He's not jabbing. He's now, Avanesyan's got a free ride. He's got a free run. He can get straight inside. And as soon as he's inside, he's chopping away to the body. And he's finding homes for those body shots. Not the usual liver shots, not the usual round the sides. He was going up through the middle, chopping them in. Short, long shots. He was mixing them up, getting them in, and then landing to the head. I just felt that Josh, in those moments in that first 2 rounds, lost his base. Everything he would have worked on with Adam Booth went out the window. He starts trading up. He starts sitting on the inside. He's using a lot of physical strength in those opening rounds. He starts moving his feet. Now he starts making more and more lateral movement. So now he's having a lot of body contact. You see in the clips how they're going side, they're leaning in on each other, they're wrestling with each other. That exerts energy. You've got to remember, against fighters from Russia and the Eastern European nations, they're used to wrestling as well. So they're used to knowing how to manipulate their body in positions and have that rugged body strength. He was using a lot of energy. His punches started going from straight and sharp to wide and long. And he started to unravel. He starts off the fight well. But then I noticed with the right eye, he had a little bit of swelling straight away in round one. Obviously, the cut at the back of the head in round two. I noticed the breathing was so heavy. Going back in the corner, he was breathing heavy. When you breathe like that, he's breathing, in my opinion, through his lats and his thoracic. He's breathing from the upper chest. He's not breathing from the diaphragm. He's mouth breathing, and that's a big problem. He's mouth breathing, and he's not breathing through the nasal. And because he's doing that, he's not getting the oxygen sufficiently through the body. I felt like he was almost like hyperventilating, like, and that to me is not good. And Adam Boot was trying to calm him down and calm him down. And to be honest, guys, I've always said boxers need to learn how to breathe properly. Mayweather was one of the masters at it. You've got to learn how to control your breathing. For me, he was in that corner. I believe Josh Kelly is a young man with the personality. And listen, I know people are going to go, oh, he fights against bums. He's fighting bums. That's why he's doing it. Even tonight, he displayed some personality. It wasn't on the level of the other fights, but he had to be more technically and tactically disciplined. But what you can see is a fighter that I think is underneath all of that. From what I hear, a nice guy, a humble kid, and a young man that probably may have some insecurities. And tonight he went in there against a man that started to put those doubts in his mind. He started, and I think in the end what came about in this fight was you had one guy that knew what he was about. I noticed as David was marching him down, David was still breathing heavy, but he was contenting himself because this is what I'm built for. This is what I'm doing what I want to do. Josh Kelly was not doing what he wanted to do. He was being pushed back. He started to be pushed onto the back foot. There was no jab. So in the end, it was just exchanges in the mid to short range. And it was just a case of, can I keep him off of me or can I land something big? He wasn't able to do that because this guy's now relentless. And one of the things that I thought about pre-fight that I didn't put in the video, and I wish I did, was Josh Kelly's punch power. Because they're talking about, yesterday they were talking about on the Disappearing Man, Tony Bellew, and Dave Caldwell's Tactical Talk, which I'll mention in a moment a bit further. They mentioned about how he's going to pick these shots and pick that shot, but it's okay landing counters. But as you saw with Jordan Gill tonight, he couldn't deter his opponent to the point of stopping him progressing. And when you've got someone like Avanesyan that actually can punch, then you've got a problem. And David was chopping him up on the inside and starting to land those uppercuts. And if you notice the shift step he was using, he was shifting from orthodox to southpaw, getting that power hand into position and then breaking him up to the body. And Josh just couldn't keep that he just couldn't keep him off. And that's because ultimately, when it comes down to it, it comes back to the basics. The basics are everything in boxing. Keeping your feet, holding your feet in the right position, the jab, the 1-2, the hook, the defensive positions, the hands, the parry, the catching, the rolling, the slipping, the balance, the footwork. It comes back down to the basics. And ultimately, no matter how many camps you do, you've got to do it on fight night. And sometimes when you're being asked to do that for the first time in your career under pressure, remember, skill is a technique performed under pressure. It's difficult. And Josh Kelly found that out tonight. A little bit of technical stuff to break it down towards the end of the video. You'll see Josh Kelly sitting on the inside, how quickly he fell into this. He went from boxing at range to then boxing in the mid and then ultimately in the short, and that's where he was broken down. Not comfortable in the inside. Yes, he's got some flashy little skills. Yes, he can roll away from shots and roll underneath them. But you see here with the right uppercut, he's not getting that leverage for that shot. It's a short shot, but look at the leverage and the torque and the power Avanesyan's getting into his shots. He knows how to work on the inside. And you see here, Kelly pushes him back towards the ropes, but then he's got no defense. He's got no defense to the temple. If you remember the breakdown video, I mentioned that he can hold his head quite high in exchanges and he doesn't have a defense. He frames the head there. And for me, that was a big problem for Josh Kelly. That lack of defense in the short range, in the pocket, his head being so high. For me, I was going to mention earlier about managing the clock. I think early on he should have managed the clock in the fight. Jab, move, 1-2, check hook, hold, and work. He should have been working on holding, how to wrap him up round the elbows, because that takes 10 seconds. And that can then break down the fight and break down the momentum of your opponent. But he didn't. He fought Avanesyan's fight, and ultimately he was made to pay for that. Coming out high in exchanges is not a good idea. I will say this though, I do like David Avanesyan. Just a night, he seems like a nice bloke, a straightforward fighting man. Russian with the Armenian heritage. What a nation they are, persecuted warriors. God bless them and his people. And good luck to him and his family. Neil Marsh, Carl Greaves. They certainly deserve it with the work they've put into him. And let me know your thoughts on what they're going to do with him next and where you'd like to see him fight. As for Josh Kelly, look, I don't want to write a fighter off after one loss. That's not how I roll on this channel. I think it's about having a balanced opinion. I think it's going to be a hard road back. I think having the whole of 2020 off, I don't think it was his fault. But I think he would have been better having a couple outings, even a few move rounds, just to get into the things that Booth was clearly getting into him in camp. You could see a massive change in his style. But again, it came down to what Johnny Nelson said, concentration. And concentration is huge at elite level sport. And this was not even the elite of the sport. Remember that. David Avanesyan is a European / fringe world class, or you can even push him up to world class, wherever you want to judge him. It's that level, but it's not the elite of the sport. And to be at the top level, you've got to be able to concentrate. Josh, he just fights in fits and spurts. He's got to work on that. He's got to go back to the drawing board. I'd like to know your thoughts, guys, on how you would match him. For me, I'd like to get him back out in the summer and see him in with international level opponents, but not going too far back, but not going too deep too soon. But who knows what they're going to do with him? Let me know your thoughts and thank you for watching. What a night.